That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Gone in the Night, the directorial debut of Eli Horowitz, which premiered at the 2022 South by Southwest Film Festival, where it was previously known as The Cow. It is being released courtesy of Vertical Entertainment on July 15th, 2022.
I like this movie.
Yeah, overall, it has some weak spots, but I did too.
The basic story, Winona Ryder plays a lady named
Kath.
She has been dating a younger guy for about a year.
Max.
And we see them headed to like a cabin in the woods. He's telling her like, oh, I booked like a surprise weekend getaway. So they're driving, and when they arrive, what?
No, it's never a good idea. That's why I'm shaking my head.
Oh. They get to the cabin, which is supposed to be like an Airbnb situation, and there's already someone staying there. Another couple, Greta and Al? Mm-hmm. So it's a little awkward at first, but Max sort of convinces them to at least let them stay one night, because Winona's character's been driving all day. There's a lot of effort made to sort of accentuate the fact that she's older. Mm-hmm. So like, oh, she's tired. She's been driving all day. She doesn't like to drive at night. And then Max, who's the younger, he's kind of painted like kind of like a loser, and he doesn't have like a driver's license.
He's irresponsible.
So they're like, yeah, sure, you can stay. They play like one of those adult board games that ask like sexy questions, and it's clear that like Greta and Max, Winona's boyfriend, are flirting. But Winona's like, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. When she wakes up in the morning, no one's in the house.
Did you say Winona Ryder was playing Kath?
Did I?
No, because we haven't talked about any of the actors playing them yet. But anyway.
What do you mean?
Because you're calling her Winona now.
Oh, I think you did say her name. But people know Winona. Mm-hmm. Winona gets up, no one's in the house. She walks out into the woods and she sees Al. And he's crying. What's wrong? Well, after you went to sleep, we went out for like a walk, and those two started making out, and they just left me. So Winona's like, okay. Flash forward a week, and Winona's at home. Her homegirl came over to talk to her, and she's just like, I'm over it. I'm done with men. I just want to be at home alone with my plants. But then she gets into her head. She wants to know who this Greta chick is. Like, she's younger. Like how is she better than me? So she calls the host of the Airbnb, because she looks up the address online, and makes up some story about how she wants to return a book to someone who was staying there, Greta. But the host is like, I can't give out people's personal information. What I can do is come by and pick up the book from you, this item. And Winona says, yeah, sure. So the host shows up at her job to pick up this supposed book, and that person's played by Dermot Mulroney. Mm-hmm. And Winona says, sorry, I was lying. My boyfriend left me for this other lady, and I just want to know more about her. So Winona and Dermot Mulroney start connecting, and then he agrees to kind of help her. She finds Greta, kind of confronts her, and Greta just says yeah, we had a connection. I'm sorry, I feel bad I took him from you, but good luck. We find out that their meeting was not happenstance.
Then the film flashes back.
And then we find out that Max, Winona's little ex-boyfriend, he met those two people previously, and
by happenstance.
And they convince him that they're in some sort of cult, and because he's open to that, because he's kind of out there, and they convince him that there's some concert or something happening, and that's why he took Winona out to the cabin in the woods. He didn't know anything about anything except there was going to be a concert, and he brought her with him. But the gag is, Dermot Mulroney is a biogeneticist or whatever, and he's developed some treatment to stay forever young, anti-aging. But in order to have this treatment, he needs a human sample, which is why the film I think was called The Cow, because they refer to this person as cattle, and they're doing blood transfusions.
It's sort of a neo-vampirism.
So the two, Al and Greta, procured Max for Dermot. Another gag is that Al is Dermot's son. Okay. Winona finds out, and everything culminates with her showing back up at the cabin, and there's like a shipping container outside of the cabin, and she goes inside and sees that that's where they've been holding Max, and he's like hooked up to like machines. So all parties involved come into this container, and we can get into what happens, but Winona sneaks her way out and locks everyone inside of the container, and that's the end of the film. We do see her like get in the car, like she's going to drive off and hopefully call the police, but then she gets out of the car and goes in the house.
And enjoys her sun-dappled reprieve.
The end.
Which is the dialogue that opens the film.
I thought this plot felt original. And yeah, it's like a horror thriller, but it's kind of light on the gore and light on the thrills, but I think it works well in keeping...
It's like the cinema of dread, more than it is a horror film.
And I don't really know Winona except like some of her work back in the 90s where she kind of plays like a similar character, and then revisiting her in Stranger Things, I think her acting's a little odd. But I think in this movie, she works very well.
I agree. It's nice to see her out of the Stranger Things jail that she has been in, because this is only her third movie in the past 7 years.
Oh wow!
Because she was in that Stanley Milgram film by Michael Almereyda, Experimenter, and then that Keanu Reeves reunion film Destination Wedding, which I didn't see. So I was immediately interested in seeing this, because I'll watch anything with Winona, even that terrible James Franco movie she did, directed by one of his acolytes, The Letter. Do you remember that from 2012? Renting that?
No.
Yeah, so it was enjoyable to see her, and I agree. I think that this character and this kind of narrative that she's placed within works really well for her style.
I thought the character work for Kath was really good because I felt bad for her. I feel bad for her because I related to her. I was telling you about this just in the sense of like feeling older and out of place, and often in situations where I I know I don't belong here, but I'm trying to make it work, and combined with this idea of like getting ourselves into circumstances where we know better, but we're not really in control. Like there's certain things you can prepare and but there are things like she really thought her boyfriend of a year was taking her on a nice little weekend trip when clearly he was doing something that like he was already lying to her with no intention of harming her. But then this fool didn't know that he was getting into something real dangerous.
And that opening is so awkward. And I think the film plays,
in a good way.
I think the film is kind of best when you've let it marinate with you and you were able to go back and revisit those what's really going on in those scenes, because the opening it feels really awkward and it's so frustrating, and then it's doubly,
until you realize,
but it's doubly so realizing like he really put her in this awkward situation.
Well, because when he first gets to the house and he's so cavalier about let us stay here, and as the audience we're like what? But then when we realize, he knew these people and they planned on him showing up.
And then all of the questions that the younger couple is asking. So Max is played by John Gallagher Jr., Owen Teague and Brianne Tju, who's in the new I Know What You Did Last Summer series reboot. Also thinking back on the questions that they're fielding to Max and Greta and Kath are really
because it
creepy.
Seems important, like when they're first meeting Max prior to the cabin trip, they're asking him, are you vegan? Do you have unprotected sex? And then when they're talking to Winona, Greta is asking her questions that initially seem kind of harsh, like are you married, and like experiences you've had. But then looking back, they're trying to vet her for this treatment.
Well, yes, because it's their own undoing, but they allow a situation to happen where they let her escape. They let her go. Like they don't want to kill her. Because
Dermot Mulroney and then his son and the girlfriend are villains technically, but they're not trying to hurt people. Like he's just trying to do this treatment, and then the other couple, they didn't want to hurt Winona because, like you said, they made a plan to let her escape.
Well, the gag about Dermot Mulroney's Barlow is that he has this sob story with Winona, because they have actually quite a bit of time in the middle where they're bonding, and she has an attraction to him, which is why she goes back to that cabin to give him a plant and discovers everything that's going on there. But he gives her the sob story about how his father had some terrible, was it hypotropism, that he basically watched them wither away and died. He says that he has the same condition.
And has told his son that his son has it.
So the son and the girlfriend are believing that he's also only
finding a cure for them.
Because he has a limited amount of time to live. But that's a lie as well. He really just wants to stay forever young.
Okay, a scene I thought was fun is when Dermot first shows up at Winona's job. There's like because she sells plants. I think she owns a plant shop. And she's selling plants. And a customer comes in like this sort of rude guy, young man, like in a suit.
A yuppie.
Yeah, like a yuppie type guy. And he throws this dead plant on the table. And she's like, I'm assuming you want a refund. And he's like, well, yeah, you didn't tell me how to take care of this. And she's like, well, I mean, it needs water. You didn't water it. And then Dermot is trying to help her out. So he's making it seem like the plant is like a rare strain. So he convinces the guy to not only buy the plant back, but for like 5 times the cost. I thought that was a fun scene. But then the following scene...
So that scene's amusing maybe on its own, but also a little bit cringy because she's like, scrabbling around with like, she's just pulling out bills from the cash register.
But I think it demonstrated that she's just kind of like awkward,
easily flustered,
but also like non-confrontational and.
But again, as you were about to say, like that scene is okay, but then it's immediately followed by something.
Because so after that, she takes a liking to Dermot and says, "You want to go grab coffee?" So they do, and they're having conversation when some random guy walks into the coffee shop because he recognizes Dermot. And this character gives exposition about how like Dermot's like in dermogenetic or biogenetics and was part of this company that was sold to like GSK for a shit ton of money, but old boy backed out before then
because of his values and
because of his integrity. So now he's trying to convince Dermot like, oh, join this new company with me.
Right there at the table.
Yeah, that was a really like I don't know what that served except to explain.
It's to set up for what we later come to find, and I think they could have really cut that scene out altogether, and it wouldn't have even mattered.
But that's the only scene that I thought was like, ooh.
And I'm glad that they changed the title because not only is the cow not evocative of anything really thrilling, but knowing that was the title, I feel like I was able to predict way before the midway point about what was really going on.
Yeah.
But the situation itself is creepy, and I think we're getting a lot of these, kind of narrative, like Airbnb related narratives, because this reminded me a lot of if you cross George Sluizer's The Vanishing with that Dave Franco film, The Rental. Even The Man from Toronto, which we just saw recently opened with a dramatic catalyst that has to do with going to the wrong Airbnb.
Yeah. My favorite scene is in the end when Winona goes into the container and sees her ex-boyfriend. When everything is revealed, then Greta is like, well, we can't let her leave because she'll tell on us. And I want to be young too, so she can be my cow. And Winona flips the script on her so hard, like, actually, no, I want to be young. And then she's telling Dermot, like, we have a connection, and you know how I feel. And then she recounts a story he shared with her. And then Dermot's like,
yeah,
hook this bitch up. Like, I thought that was so good. Because Greta, of all the characters, seems the most vile because she really is digging into Winona's character about being older. So I really love that in the end. Dermot, like that, said, oh, yeah. Because it's also established when we first find out that Al is Dermot's son, that he doesn't really care for Greta. He kind of says her name like, oh, Greta's here. Mm-hmm. So he was happy to sacrifice her.
Yes, but...
And then it felt so good when Winona got out of the container and locked them in. Because usually in horror films, there's that point where it's like, you could have taken that extra step to secure your safety, and they never do. And then there's like, like a second climax.
It's that moment where it never makes sense.
It never makes sense. But in this movie, it does. Like when she locks him in that container, it's a wrap. I like that.
Well, I also like that it showed that both of the women, Greta and Kath, are more cunning than the men, who are actually much more easy to manipulate.
Sure.
Because they're basically drones. Like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, I thought that was entertaining because both of those women both know exactly what's going on in that scenario, and neither of the men really do.
What else you got?
That's about it.
Well, I would recommend this film. I'd give it 3 out of 5.
I agree. I think that the rough spots are forgivable. Eli Horowitz, who, that's Winona Ryder's original last name, and I was when I'd seen this film come up on my radar, I'm like, oh, that must be a relative of hers, but I don't think it is. I am interested in. He wrote the series Homecoming, which has 2 seasons. The first starred Julia Roberts and the second Janelle Monáe, which after watching this, I would be interested in visiting that. But yeah, I was, overall, I liked it.
Hit the thanks button, listen to our podcast. Bye.